Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our live open day experience from Spirit Studios and from our studio Spirit. Normally at this point I'd be asking you to turn your mobile phones off, but not today, please. Before I introduce myself and fully run through a little more about us, I'd first like to offer you my sincere hope that you and your loved ones have all been well during this unprecedented lockdown, which is now running beyond 80 days. Since the end of March, our building has been shut, but we remained working and planning for the days, weeks and months ahead. I'm pleased to be here now, along with great staff who have made this possible. An important day for you all to be able to hear what we do and see what we do and ask me as many questions as you like, no matter how complex. So to quickly introduce myself, my name is Adrian Greensides and I'm the principal of Spirit Studios. I've been principal for a little under a year, having previously held the position of head of marketing. Like most members of staff here, I produce music. In fact, I studied one of our short electronic music courses whilst working here in marketing, primarily to learn to better produce, but also to learn more about us. What I did learn was that this really is a very special place for staff and students to experience the best in music production and engineering, audio production. For students, that special place went online from late March. Thankfully, we were very, very well prepared, and again with excellent staff right across the board, we were able to continue to teach and graduate our students through online learning and online tutorials. From our students' reps, we have had resoundingly high praise for how we have reacted, conducted ourselves, but most importantly, provided the continued and solid online experience for all of our students. Alongside this, of course, a major focus was placed on the well-being of our students and all our staff, with virtual welfare sessions taking place on a daily basis for all those who needed it. Our plans for September are fully in place, and without going into too much detail right now, as I'm sure the question will arise, we are all determined to take every advantage from this situation and remain a consistent high quality, but also become a highly creative experience. So who are we? Well, essentially we were the first UK audio engineering and music production school in the UK around 40 years ago, first opening as music studios back in 1980. This was in Tariff Street at the heart of the city's now northern quarter. By 2004 we'd moved into where we are right now, in Ardwick, which is about sort of 3-4 minutes walk away from Manchester Piccadilly railway station. So in that time we've grown and we now have 5 degree courses. That includes 2 brand new courses which start this year in September. That's the entrepreneurial audio production and the live audio engineering and music production. Added to that are electronic music production and performance, music production and music business and creative industries. Alongside this, we run a number of short to medium courses, all similar in subject to our 5 degrees and include summer schools. Summer schools run this year in August, so at the moment they are still being planned to take place. But today you'll see our recording studios. Outside our building, for those who know, it looks deceptively small, but runs to many floors and deep, with a venue, 7 recording studios, 5 Mac suites, DJ booths and edit suites, all highly kitted out, creative spaces for all of our students. So today's experience is also going to be creative, and throughout the next 2 hours we'll be doing 2 really great demonstrations, which includes music production, which will take place in here with Lewis Jones, and in another studio for electronic music with Alastair Atcheson. And we hope that you enjoy the experience today and look forward to welcome you all in person soon. After both performances, I'll be here to answer any and all of your questions. Please have these ready and type your thoughts and questions in throughout the day. Finally, I'd like to thank you all for attending and wish you all a pleasant experience today, but most importantly, wishing you all well. Okay, so we're going to move on. There's going to be about a 5-minute break now, up to a 5-minute break, just as we sort of transfer things over to Lewis. From that, there'll also be another 5-minute break, a short one once Lewis is finished. Then we'll go into Alastair Atcheson's. If you've got any questions, again, please type them in. If you type them in, we can then record those questions and then bring those back to ones which I'll be able to answer for you. As I say, any questions that you've got, anything that you want to raise, what our plans are for September, what we've been doing in terms of everything from brand new safety measures inside the building, which are obviously far and wide, but also about our new courses, about what we've done this year in terms of kitting out with new equipment in the studios and the general upgrades that we generally have. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoy it, and just bear with us just for a moment as we transfer you over to Lewis. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, welcome back to our Spirit Studios virtual open day. I hope you enjoyed the little intro by Adrian there. My name's Lewis, I'm a studio assistant here and also a part-time tutor. I hope you enjoy this with this little demo here and then the demo later with Al. First off, I just want to explain we are in Spirit Studio itself here, and it's a really nice room. As you can see, we have this beautiful Neve VR Legend 48 channel console. We flew this in from Japan around 10-15 years ago, before I was here. It's a really, really nice thing. You don't get to use this every day, even in a normal working environment, let alone a university experience. It's a really, really beautiful thing. And it's not the only good thing in here, because we also have some beautiful Neve AMS delay and reverb unit. We have a Roland chorus echo, a beautiful Universal Audio 1176 compressor, a TubeTech compressor as well, which we'll be using later. I have a set of PMC monitors, some Yamaha NS10s. This room also comes with its own Yamaha grand piano, which we have on loan from the Royal Northern College of Music, and also a Yamaha drum kit, which is currently in an isolation booth that you can't see because it's over there. This room does come self-contained as well, because it has its own store of microphones, including things like this, AKG 414, really good all-rounder. We also have a U87 Neumann, really, really nice thing, German. You'll see these everywhere. It's like the industry standard for vocals. And then also we have a 1960s Coles 4038 ribbon microphone. You don't see these everywhere, and the fact that we have one and it's in working condition, it might look a bit battered, but it's really, really nice. Cool, so quickly, what I'm just going to go through is the demo we're going to do today. We have a multi-track that we have all across the desk here, so we have everything from the drums, horns, synths, vocals, and we're basically going to start mixing it from the ground up, so from the kick drum all the way through to the vocals. Obviously, we're in a short thing, but we'll see how we go. So quickly, let me play you a dry version of it, I suppose, and you can quickly see what it sounds like. Alright, so as you can hear, there's lots going on in that. So, like I say, we're going to bring everything back down to the start. We're going to start EQing things, adding some compression to some things, and we'll get right into it. Let me hit play again. Alright, so we're going to start off here with our kick drum. This is a kick in. As you can hear, it's very clicky already. It sounds really nice. They have a bit of the snare drum in there, but once the snare drum's in, we're not going to be able to hear that. It'll be fine. So, add a bit of EQ on here. Bit of low end. Sounds really nice. Hear that mid-range there? It doesn't sound very nice, so we're going to take all of that out. We have some top, but realistically we don't need that at all. So here, next up, we have the kick out mic. This has a lot of the snare drum and the rest of the kit in it. So again, we're going to take some of that top out. We don't need any of that in there. We already have the top from the kick in even. So together, it's starting to sound pretty nice. Just with those two, I think we can go for that for now. Snare drum, just to the bit where he doesn't play the snare. And here we go. Cool. So, in this, You hear that resonant frequency? We're going to hopefully take most of that out because it isn't very nice at all. You see how it starts to get cleaner? So the frequency there is around about 5k, maybe a bit less. I'm just going to take all of it out, add a bit of top end, just for a bit of snap on the snare. I think that sounds nice. We're going to go next for our snare bottom. I'm not going to bother EQing this. This is just going to sit just underneath the snare anyway. It sounds fine to me. Awesome, sounds good. Next up we have two tom tracks. These, when he plays the toms, are fine. They're quite a lot of spill on them, but when he hits the toms they'll be fine. So, next up we have our overheads. Again, these sound nice. We could potentially take out some of the EQ if we want, some of the low end. Maybe take some of that. So, our kit is currently sounding pretty good. So what we're going to do is now add in our room mic. So there's a lot of room in here. It's in a big reverb chamber. So basically, what I'm going to use this tube tech that we mentioned before. So I'm going to activate the insert in here. And then I can come down and try it. I don't particularly mind crushing this because it's only going to sit behind everything anyway. And then we can mix it all in. So straight away, our kit already starts to sound pretty nice. It's a really well recorded track already, but basically all we've added is some EQ on our kick and snare, EQ'd our overhead ever so slightly, and then added in this room mic, which we've put through the tube tech compressor. Next, we're going to move on to our bass guitar. We have a bass mic on a bass amp, and a bass DI, which is really nice. This DI is really nice, and again I'm just going to EQ this a little bit, a bit of low end. It already sounds really clean, so we just need to sort of blend them together. Now we're going. Okay. Next up, we have our guitar. So in here, there is a guitar on a condenser microphone. I don't know exactly what it is, but it sounds maybe a little bit muddy to me. And then there is also a dynamic microphone, something like a 57. That sounds really nice. Again, EQ it a little bit just to see what we've got. Maybe a bit scratchy on the top. Together. Very nice. So, we have our drums, bass, and our guitar. Next up, there's a really nice horn in here. Alright. I'm a big fan of this horn, it sounds very nice. So, with this, it's really clean already, so I'm not going to bother with doing much EQing, because it's going to sit in everything anyway. But what I am going to add to it is a little bit of reverb. And that's just going to sit behind everything. Next up, we have a Hammond. Again, sounds nice by itself, so leave it like that. Next up, there's a Moog channel and a Nord channel, but they're not playing in this bit, I don't believe. So there's also a Yamaha keys. So I'm going to find bits where they play, and also then we'll move on to our vocals. Alright, so here we should have the Moog. Sounds great by itself. I'm going to leave it as well. Next, find the Nord. Alright, here we should have our Nord. Like a honky-tonk kind of thing. Again, sounds really clean. All this stuff will be DI'd, so there's no spill from anything. It's not microphones apart from the Hammond. We're just going to kind of generally balance all of these things together. That's all of our instruments. And then we can start to add in our vocals. Alright, so everything's going on there. So, next thing, gonna find some vocals and we'll see what they sound like. As this is a live recording, it's a little bit erratic in places. So usually we would compress this. I'm not gonna compress it now, but in the mix that we would compress it usually. But with this, I am going to add some EQ and also some reverb to this.
So I could take my own joy ride. Not my car, but I'll take a ride.
See, there's a lot of low end.
Started up
I'm going to take most of it out.
And just for a while,
for the top.
Brakes on the streets up nobody sees. After you turn these
and then a bit of reverb.
Really like this, I should get one of these. So I could take my own joy ride.
Alright. There's also a backing vocal. And then a bit of reverb to that. Maybe a little bit of EQ.
Turn these headlights on. Joy ride. Now my car will take a ride. Started out with the easy side. I believe brakes on the streets of nobody sees. I think turn these headlights on. Really like this life is going. So I can take my own joy ride.
To me, everything's starting to sound quite nice by itself. Maybe the horn's a little bit loud, the Hammond's going all the time. Sounds nice. Those vocals sound okay. Like I say, we would usually compress them, but what we're going to do now, we're going to take this into an already mixed session that I did in Logic, and we can basically see how the difference between mixing with analog, like we are now, and then mixing in the box in Logic. So we're going to go to that one now. I quickly need to change the inputs very quickly. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is quickly show you this and then change the screen so you can see us in Logic. So I think straight away, obviously, this one's had a bit more time spent on it, and it already just sounds a bit more lush to me, I think. So what we're going to do with this is just go through everything very quickly. So if I go, here are our drums. Again, we have that room mic, adding quite a lot. The kick is really punchy, it sounds really nice. Again, with the snare, we've taken that resonant frequency out like we did on the analog mix. Everything fits together really nicely. There's the compression on the drums. We have a little bit of EQ, taking some stuff out, just cleaning it up a little bit. We have a bass, we have a mic, which is very deep. A lot of EQ on there, just to get rid of some of the mid. And then with the DI. Similar actually, but it's got a lot of different characteristics to it. These two guitars. With these guitars, we have a little stereo spread on them just to make them a little bit wider. It's very subtle, and then also some compression and a little bit of EQ just to take some of the harshness out. And we have the horns and all the synths and stuff, so we can hear all these. They're pretty self-explanatory. So, and then last up, we have these vocals. Obviously, you noticed with the other ones, like I said, they were a little bit erratic. So what I'm going to do here is show you how I've compressed them to make them a little bit smoother.
Not my car, but I'll take a ride. Started up with the keys inside, just for a while.
So we've taken a lot of EQ on this. There is also a compressor, a de-esser to get some of those syllables out. Sibilants.
Not my car, but I'll take a ride. Started up with the keys inside.
And most importantly, a bit of chorus, just to kind of back it up a bit.
Not my car, but I'll take a ride. Started up with the key.
And obviously then there's the backing vocal. So together.
Not my car, but I'll take a ride. Started up with the keys inside. Just for a while. I pull the brakes on the streets so nobody sees. I do you turn these headlights on. Really like this life you wanna be. So I will take my own choice right.
So there we have it. We have our mixed version in Logic, which is all standard stock Logic plugins. You could do this in any DAW really. This is just Logic, which is my preference. With this, with the stuff on the desk, it's all very quickly just balanced, but I don't know if you can hear in the headphones or whatever you're listening on, but basically the EQ and the stuff in this is really, really nice. It's so crisp, it's so clean. We've had this recapped a few months ago before the lockdown happened, and it's a really, really nice thing to use. It is a third year or third phase studio, which means obviously you don't get to use it till last year, but there are plenty of opportunities throughout the years when we get back to have a go on it and get hands on. It's a really, really nice thing. So I think now we have some questions, I believe. How many doors do we use in Spirit? So we teach on Ableton, Pro Tools, Logic, and I believe a bit of Cubase. It's mainly centered around Ableton and Pro Tools, really. Pro Tools much more for the recording side of things and mixing, and Ableton a lot of the electronic side of things is becoming really good for that. Me personally, I know Pro Tools and Logic. Logic's what I learned on before I came here and studied, and Pro Tools I learnt here because it is still the industry standard for mixing and recording, definitely. Ableton's something which I need to get my teeth into because it is the new thing, really. So do I prefer mixing inside the DAW or on the desk in like an analog form? I think it totally depends what you're doing. I think for electronic stuff, it would always be inside the DAW just because you have a computer with you, usually most times, and it means you can do it anywhere. You can do it sort of on the go. Obviously, you can't take this with you, or you can't put this in your house, or at least I can't. I don't know where you live. But saying that, to be able to get your hands to be able to mix on this, especially for more sort of band and acoustic music, stuff like that, being able to do it on something like this, or the Audion, which you'll see later, this is amazing. And like I say, you don't get your hands on it every day. I think it's, so like I say, it totally depends. It's totally personal preference, but also sort of caters for whatever the genre of music that you're doing, I think. How easy is it to get to grips with a desk like this? Well, specifically with this one, I know when I did my course, and I believe it's still the same now, is that you have sort of 4 or 5 sort of dedicated 3-hour lessons just learning this. Obviously, there's other people in the class and stuff, as well as your hands-on equipment. And basically, every channel is the same, and this one specifically is a third one, but you can start right at the bottom on the Audion desks, which you'll see later, which are a much more simplified version, but they all do the same thing, obviously all the capacitors and stuff are different, so the sound is always going to be slightly different to each one. But in terms of learning them, you just have to put the time in. Like I say, you have those sort of 5 lessons, 3-hour lessons, so it's like, 15, 20 hours, whatever it is. It's just a case of getting to grips with it. But once you've had your first year and your second year, coming in here and doing this one will be much simpler. My thoughts on gain automating for vocals. Yeah, I mean, especially if you have time. Obviously today we didn't have time. This is why I've sort of compressed everything as opposed to using automation. I think using automation would definitely be a thing, especially with this a performance like this where it's quite erratic. The vocals are very up and down. I'm assuming he was playing another instrument in this, and it would definitely be something that you use, especially because you can get so many different layers and different parts can pop out at different times. It would be something that I definitely would use if I was mixing properly. So, yeah, I would use it. So this one specifically, like I said, you have those lessons, but it does take a bit of time to get to grips with, to sort of get the ins and outs of it. Each channel has its own compression, its own EQ. We have this lexicon reverb. You just have to spend a bit of time with it, but you can, during those lessons, you get your time on it, and it becomes very apparent very quick, I think. How did I find studying on my course at Spirit? So I did mine 2013 to 2016, so I finished 4 years ago now. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to come somewhere that was kind of a little bit smaller than, the big universities, because you get that hands-on time. But then as soon as I came to see this place, I came down from the south, came to see this, and especially this room. I remember sitting in here on an open day like this one, but obviously there were people here, and the tutor at the time, he really inspired me. He showed me this sort of cinematic piece, and yeah, it was really amazing. And as soon as I wanted to come here, and I was like, oh wow. And then the course was really, really good. I learned a lot of different things like electronic music or band recording, microphones, all that kind of stuff. I personally I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it. Yeah, so the question was, do I work in the industry now? Yeah, so I've done a bit of live sound, as well as we've done quite a few sessions in here. I've also done some pre-production for a fairly big pop artist, which I'm not going to name. So I did some pre-production for an album almost 2 years ago now. The album went live last year, and so yes, I suppose is the answer. Cool, that's it. So there's going to be like a 5-minute break now before we go downstairs to Alastair, who's going to do an electronic session. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and stay safe. Thank you.
Hey guys, welcome to Audience Studio 2. My name's Al. I'm a producer and an engineer, and I'm one of the studio assistants here at Spirit. And I also produce and host the Spirit Studios podcast. And we started the podcast a few months ago. We're about 9 or 10 episodes in at the moment, and we cover a load of different topics on the podcast. But one of the segments that I do is called Making Tracks. And on Making Tracks, I pick a style of music and then look at some production techniques, some ideas for creating a song in a certain style. And so today we're going to do a kind of live version of that. We've got about 25 minutes, so I'm going to basically get started. But if you've got any questions about what I'm doing over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll have some time at the end to answer them. First things first, we're in Audience Studio 2, and we're using this ASP8024 Audient desk. Basically, everything I have here is running through this desk and going into Logic Pro, which I'm using for this demo. And we've got a couple of bits and pieces of MIDI as well, which is all rooted in. So the first thing that I'm going to do is lay down like a little beat. So I'll jump into Logic so you guys can see what I'm doing. Alrighty, so this track that I'm putting together is about 115 BPM. And if you're a Logic user, you may have got the update. We're using Logic 10.5, which they released like a couple of weeks ago. So this is like brand new stuff. So we wanted to try and make something with it. The first thing I'm going to do is put down the basic pattern. So I'm going to keep things fairly simple. I've got the step sequencer down here at the bottom, and I've got a few different kit pieces. I've got a kick, a snare, another snare, like an 80s kind of Linn drum snare, a clap, and then a snap as well. So I'm going to just let this loop. We've got like a 4-bar loop going, and I'm just going to put down a pattern on this. Cool. Alrighty, so now I'm going to jump down to the hi-hats. And again, I've got a few pieces set up. I've got a closed hi-hat. I've got 2 closed hi-hats, in fact. I've got this one, and then an open hi-hat as well. So I'm going to put a pattern in as well. Yeah. Cool, and then I'm going to jump into this. This is just some like percussion stuff that I found, which sounds kind of like this. Some like little clicks. I'm just going to drop a few of these into. Alrighty. So now that we've got that going, I'm going to record some live stuff in, so I'm going to switch back over to the other camera as well. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to record some percussion in. I'm using 2 mics for this. The first bit I'm going to use, I'm going to record some shakers, and I'm using this Rode NT2000. And again, this is going in through the desk, and then I've got a Shure SM58 as well, where I'm going to record some stuff. So I'm not a great percussion player, so we're going to see how this goes. Cool, right, I'm going to just flatten this down in Logic and then just chop the end. I'm just going to use the second half. I think that half was probably good, so I'm going to just copy that over. Okay, onto the clavs. Cool, that'll do. In fact, so that first one is a little bit out of time, so I'm going to do the same kind of thing. Just use the takes that are good. Okay, it's bongo time. Alrighty, so as you can probably tell, I'm not a bongo player. I'll switch back to Logic, and you can just see I'm going to do a bit of processing on this now, so let's jump back in. Alrighty, so we'll have a quick listen to those bongo tracks, see if at least one of them is in time. Okay, that's the best I've ever played bongos, so that's great. To give this a little bit more movement, at the moment, it's kind of flat. So I'm going to stick this auto filter on. And you can hear there, it's creating like a kind of wah effect, so it's going to add a bit of movement to that when we get it into the mix as well. Cool, I'm going to put in some MIDI instruments now, so I'll switch you back over. This is like a Wurlitzer keyboard, so this is going to be kind of like a nice warm kind of keyboard, and then I've got some sample stuff as well. So we'll do this keyboard part first. So I'm going to go back in and quantize that and stuff in a sec, but first I'm going to show you this sample that I've put together. So for this, something I prepared earlier, I recorded this in earlier. Now this is a, I'm not entirely sure, I think it might be a zither. We've got a bunch of like weird instruments and stuff that you can check out. Actually everything that you can see pretty much except the guitar is stuff that I've checked out from our reception area. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear this. It sounds cool, but it doesn't sound particularly usable. So earlier I recorded a pluck of that, and I've used Logic's quick sampler, and I've put it into Logic and basically mapped it to the keyboard. So you should be able to play that as a lead instrument. So I'm going to use that for a lead part now. Keep it nice and simple. Okay, so I've got a bit of processing on my channel strips here for both of these. The first thing that I'm going to do is, because I am not a great keyboard player, is just jump into my keyboard section. Let's have a quick listen to this. Cool, and I'm just gonna quantize that. So it just sits nicely on the grid. And I've got a bit of processing on here. I'm using the, I've got a ring shift, a stereo delay, and a tremolo. So if I start adding these in, again, it's just adding some movement to the to that sound, because otherwise it's just a little bit flat and dry. And then this sample thing that we've played in as well, again, it's like a bit dry. So I've got a pedal board, which you kind of think is a guitar thing, but you can put it on anything. It's got some compression, overdrive, delay, and a reverb. Bit more reverb with the chroma verb. And then a tape delay, which just makes things get a bit weird. Okay. Liking the sound of that. The next section we've got is stuff that I've put together in Serum. So if you're not familiar with Serum, it's a wavetable synth, and it's installed on the computers here at Spirit. This first thing I've made is a pad that sounds like this. In fact, let's just solo that. Okay, so it's kind of this nice, like, it's got these two wavetables here, and a bit of auto filter. It's okay, but again, it's not really interacting with anything in our song. So earlier, I took the shaker and I put a noise gate on, and now the pad is being triggered by the shaker. So if I take the threshold down, it doesn't do anything. But if you bring this up, it kind of starts to jitter. So again, like, because the shaker wasn't played in perfectly, having two elements that kind of interact, even if they're not perfectly in time, kind of makes them sound a little bit more deliberate. And then I've also got an auto filter as well. Bit more movement in there. Next thing I've got is this. I've called Serum Sigh. That's just kind of a bit of movement again. It's like a more of an ambient sort of textural element. And then the bass. So this bass again is another thing I've made in Serum. And this is comprised of two oscillators. So we've got this. Oh, that's because I'm on the wrong patch. There we go. Cool. So we've got that top one, and then this kind of sub thing as well. And that's fine. We could leave it like that, except again, it's not really like doing too much. So I've got a compressor, and for those of you that are producing stuff, you might know where this is going. I've got this side chain, so when I turn this on, my kick drum is clamping down on the compressor, and it's basically ducking the bass out the way, and that way we can get that movement that we need. So with, without, okay, cool. I'm going to record some guitar as well. That last take. Guitar 2. Cool, so I'm going to take those takes, just flatten them down so we can use them in the mix. Maybe just lower the level of that, just a tad. Okay, cool. And then I've got a couple more elements, and this first one is like a textural element. So I'll jump into Logic so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay. I've got this Jungle Rain, but I've chosen a picture of a dog because you got to have a dog in every session. So if I play this, this is like an ambient thing. So I made this I made this on one of my classes. I did some post-production stuff, and we made a library, like a sound library that you can use in film and TV. In fact, I used one of these, if you can see on the webcam. It's very dark, but it's basically a portable recorder. So I went out to the Peak District, recorded a load of rivers and like trees, and looked generally quite strange. I went to a pet shop and recorded some like exotic birds and parrots and mixed those all in so it kind of sounds like you're in a jungle. And so I'm going to put this into the track, but at the moment, it's kind of flat. So what I've done is got this EQ and then a modulator, and these are great because you can turn these on, and if you look down here at the bottom now, we've got this LFO. It's generating this this wave, and it's synced. So every 2 bars, this wave basically moves up and down, and you can see on here that it's controlling the kind of the depth and the frequency of my EQ, so it sounds kind of like waves. So we're going to keep that in as well, and that's just going to keep doing that. And then finally, we've got like the best bit. So I'm going to switch you out of Logic. Oh. Okay. So now we're going to take a quick look at this ARP, which should sound like. Cool. And so this is actually some external MIDI. So what we're doing with this is I have an ARP pattern set up in Logic. We've routed this out and it's going through the Doppler, which is an analog modular synth. And so I have this ARP pattern coming out of here, going through, and we can tweak stuff and in real time like change the sound. So I'll give you a quick demo. And you can do things like sweep the filter cutoff. Change volume really easily, and also switch up with the pitch as well. So you can change these things back in real time. Like normally you would record this in, but we're going to play with it in the moment. So that's all the pieces of the track that I'm going to put together. So now I'm going to move these over into Logic's, excuse me, move these over into Logic's live loops view. So I'll quickly switch you back so you can see. So over here, this is another feature that just came out like a couple of weeks ago. So what we're going to do is drag parts of our session over and arrange them, and then I'm going to use my launch pad and we're going to jam out and see what we can make. Cool, so I'm just going to kind of mess with the arrangement on this and just kind of change things up so we've got different instruments coming in at different points. Maybe like take these out. I need both hands for this, so I have to put you down for a sec. Okay, so that might have looked a bit weird, but I'll show you what we're going to do with this now. So I'm just going to take you out of Logic View. Cool, so everything that I've done there, you can kind of see in the top left corner, is going to this launch pad. So this arrangement is now on here. So if I start messing with stuff, we can play with this track and mess around with the arrangement. So I'm going to do that now. Cool, so this is our full arrangement. And I've also brought up Logic's remix effects, and we're going to use that to mess with the sound a little bit. Cool. So yeah, there's just a few ways you can use some of the different equipment that we've got. I'm just going to grab my chair. So it's kind of a mix of like electronic stuff and live instruments as well. So yeah, there's a couple of different ways you could have set this up. This is just something that we thought would be cool. So hopefully you enjoyed it. And yeah, I think I've got a bit of time for some questions as well. Cool. So Ashling's asked if I follow the same process every time I produce. No, not really. I mean, it kind of depends. Like, I think anyone who, again, I speak for myself, but I think a lot of people who create stuff or are trying to create music will find inspiration in lots of different places. So the approach that I took to this was like, why not get a bunch of equipment out and just kind of see what works? So we sort of laid everything out and then tried to build it from there. So the inspiration was more about, in this, the instrumentation than it was necessarily like an idea for a song. Other times I'll have a chord progression or maybe a drum beat or something in mind, and I'll mess with that. But yeah, it just depends on the day, really. So Benny's asked if I prefer Ableton or Logic, which I started teaching myself Logic before I came to Spirit. So for me, it's the one that I felt most comfortable using. What's been really good about the recent update to Logic is that they've taken some stuff that you would only have found in Ableton and imported it. So yeah, for me, I really like Logic, but all the stuff that I was doing here, like Ableton would be really geared towards doing that kind of stuff too, especially live performance. So I've been using a Launchpad Mini, which will sync up with Logic, but we have like pushes and stuff that you can use here. So yeah, all the stuff that I'm doing, you could use in Ableton, and Ableton will give you different features and different things. So again, it's really up to you which you want to use. Cool. So Struan's asked what the name of the podcast is. It's the Spirit Studios podcast. So very original name we've gone for. But yeah, the Spirit Studios podcast. It's on Spotify. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, like anywhere that you want to listen. Yeah, I think we've just released episode 9. Going for episode 10, and in episode 10 I'm actually going to be kind of repurposing some of the stuff that I did today and breaking it down into a track, but I'm going to be doing a lot of like sampling. So like my kick drum is made from like a cardboard box and stuff, so I'll break down how I did that, and maybe give some ideas and stuff that you guys might be able to try as well. Cool, yeah, so Harvey's asked if we're using the new Logic update. Yeah, in fact, I wouldn't be able to do some of the stuff that we've looked at today if I hadn't done the Logic update. So yeah, if you're a Logic user and you've not got it, like, you got to go for it. It's great. The live loop stuff where I was jamming with the Launchpad, that's all part of the new update. I've had that Launchpad for a while, and now it's finally synced up. It's really great fun. Again, like some of the drum machine stuff, the step sequencer, this new sampling features, like they're really, really powerful. So yeah, if you're a Logic user, like yeah, go for the update. Logic's actually free to try for 90 days, and so is Ableton at the moment. So if this stuff is kind of new to you, but you want to have a go, like you can try both of those programs for free for like 90 days while we're in lockdown. So that's really cool as well. Cool. Alice has asked how I taught myself to use Logic, and to be honest, I went to a friend's house and he had Logic, and we spent like a couple of hours just making like really horrible music, but it was really, really good fun. And I hadn't used anything like this before. I'd played guitar for a long time, but that was about it. So I just downloaded it and just kind of just started trying to record. And to begin with, when I started, I was just recording bands, like just wanted to record like my own music, but it wasn't really anything like this. And I got some way, I got like some headway into that, but it wasn't until I studied at Spirit where I realized like I had quite a lot of gaps in my knowledge, especially when it came to things like production and mixing. So yeah, but I definitely found that it helped to start at home first, and then when I came here, I was kind of like already felt fairly comfortable using a DAW. But yeah, Logic's great for that. It's very intuitive. We also run Pro Tools here and Ableton. So, you know, again, if you're interested, like my advice would just be like download it and just try. And you'll make a lot of mistakes, but you'll figure your way through. And YouTube videos as well. There's like so many good YouTube videos too. And podcast episodes from the Spirit Studios podcast. Cool. So Kerry's asked if we can use all the stuff when you come to Spirit. Yeah, you can. The only thing you can't use is my guitar and pedals. I mean, you have to ask me really nicely, but everything else you can see here is all available from the reception, so you can check it out. And we've got some new equipment that's just come in as well. So yeah, this is just a small selection of stuff that you can use here. Again, like 2 mics. We've got loads. Like it's really up to you. Like as creative as you want to get, you can check any equipment out that you like. Cool. So we're going to go back to Adrian. We're going to have a 5-minute break, and then Adrian's going to come back to answer some more questions for you as well.
Um, right. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. I know a lot of you did. I certainly did, and we did in here. It was yeah, it was pretty good. There's a lot of questions, so I'm going to run through a lot of questions which I've already printed out. Actually, some of them. As I'm talking, if there's any more questions, then feel free to ask them, and they'll just get shouted to me, and I'll answer them as they go. The last question I saw was, is this studio that we're in right now available for those who would be studying the live and music production degree? Yes. The answer is yes, they would. This studio, in fact, is one of the early studios. It's absolutely a brilliant studio. I think you can see behind me the desk that we've got in here. It's been in the building for about a year. We've got a few of them. So these are kind of sort of entry-level studios. But so yes, that's a big yes. Okay, I'm going to go through some others. So is the 6-month electronic music production course, can a complete beginner do it? Yes, I did. So I was a complete beginner. I got a free download for 30 days from Ableton. So essentially everybody can get it. So I actually hadn't even been near a DAW. I'd been around music, but I've never played music. I'd certainly never contemplated ever writing or recording or whatever. So yes, that's an absolute yes to that question. What is the difference between the music production and electronic music production course? I suppose the main difference is from the start is that the technology and techniques are around software and DJ specific gear, as well as sort of building other skills more closely related to electronic music. So that's sample creation, sample libraries, and obviously there's a focus on performance on electronic music. So there are differences. Obviously we encourage all of our students. So if you're an electronic music student, and there are sessions on electronic music degree as well where you do use these studios, absolutely, definitely. And there is an emphasis on doing some of the stuff that obviously we've just seen Al do. Most electronic musicians today naturally just go into the box. So it might be a plug-in, VSTs, etc., but you've just seen now that it certainly doesn't need to be that way. And in fact, it's best if it's not, I would say. So that's kind of that is the difference. The music production degree is obviously more different in so much that it also focuses on the studio naturally, but also on microphone technique. So what Al was doing probably wouldn't have focused so much on the microphone techniques and the choice of microphone, etc. So you'll get that more in depth in music production. Of course, in music production, you also go into depth of recording actual instruments. So drums, how do you record a set of drums, for instance? How do you record a piano? How do you record all sorts of bits and pieces, which, of course, electronic music wouldn't really kind of focus on. So there are hybrids between sort of the two, but there's definitely there is a sort of distinction, really, which is probably the best way to describe it between those two. In the music production course, can we still choose to be mostly electronic in our projects if we feel, still following the guidelines of assignments? Well, absolutely, following the guidelines of assignments is the crucial thing. Let's remember, obviously, these are degrees, so they do have to be degrees. Provided that you, I mean, I don't know who and what kind of stuff you're doing, but I mean, I would imagine that if you wanted to do everything that the music production degree shows you and teaches you, and you learn all that and you use all of that in order to pass a solid degree, but you were to use in your own life and in your own work electronic music as your foundation, then absolutely, completely and totally yes. I mean, in a weird kind of way, lots of work goes on by students inside these studios, but at the same time, lots of work goes on at home or in edit suites. A lot of it could be mixing and so on and so forth. So you could argue there it's electronic anyway because you're just inside the DAW. So, but we can certainly talk to you more about that, which is a point actually. If you want, I'll give you the email address at the end, or you can ask us questions on Instagram as well. Also, let me just see one question. What's the deal with studio bookings outside of classes? So this is one studio. I won't go into too much depth as to how you get them, but we give studio credits. Studio credits aren't something that you earn. Studio credits are something that you have. So all students have studio credits. Those studio credits are used to in non-monetary terms, purchase time inside the studio. And there's different ways which you can do it. So advanced bookings and next day bookings, and there's slightly different things. And some studios are more expensive, if you like, as you have different needs and different requirements. Some studios, like where Lewis was upstairs in Spirit Studios, if you were a first year, of course, you wouldn't be able to book that. That would be like going from a sort of bicycle to a jumbo jet in like instantly. So your credits will be for sort of other studios, which are obviously all brilliant, and as I say, all completely brand new. It's fair to say overall, each student outside of classes could look to about 8 to 10 hours studio time for themselves each week. Quite easily. That's a fair assumption. Creatively, you can increase that, because I could choose to be in a studio for 4 hours, this studio for instance, but I could also come in with a friend who also books it for the next 4 hours. So essentially we've got the booking from 12 o'clock till 8 p.m. for instance, and we've got 8 hours and we're both working on a project. So an awful lot, more than anywhere, to be perfectly honest with you. I know that we have very good levels of studio time available to our students, as well as all of the equipment. You don't just hire the studio, you can get the equipment with it and so on and so forth, which doesn't come with credits. These are just available as and when. Okay. As the COVID-19 pandemic problem has arisen, I wanted to ask about the grade expectation for this year. It has made a huge impact on the grading in my course and many others. Will this be considered? Yes, it will be considered. And firstly, I'm sorry that you've kind of had to write this. You know, this whole sort of thing must be really difficult to understand. And I think that there's been lots of guidance in some areas, perhaps given to you by your own establishment, but then at the same time there's been no guidance, and we're kind of in the middle of this sort of weird zone. However, yes, adjustments will be made, and they will be considered for that. And the best solution, I think, for you and for anybody else is for us to email you specifically regarding your own situation, and many of you in fact might be in exactly the same boat. I'm sure you all are, and then if we look at all of your individual cases, then we will look at that. But certainly these are unprecedented times, and so the way that we are reacting to this is exactly the same. We don't want this to impact people's education. We don't want this to impact people's access to studying with us at all. And with that, I think the same person, Bartos, as us also asked that if this were to be financially impacted you, would you be better off to start your degree on another year? Then again, yes, it would. And those are individual circumstances that would be chosen or taken by yourself and perhaps family members and friends and so on. There are advantages, of course, to starting in 2020, this September. But of course there are also advantages for you personally if you need to start in September 2021. If that's the case, then yes, absolutely, we won't forget the fact that you applied for us during this time, and we will take that with us in our thoughts then for the following year. So that's not a problem. With that, one of the other questions were, with the current global pandemic, Do you know what the content will look like in relation to the split between online learning and in the studios? Yes, we do. So as I said at the very, very beginning, there is a plan in place. Now, it's so fluid, things are changing all the time. If we were to be able to walk around a studio, which I think next time, in fact, possibly I'm going to go out on a limb here and invite you all back for me to walk around the studios with a GoPro on my head or something. That might be sort of quite good. But if we were to walk around, we would see everything we have done inside this building to change. This is everything from screens to hands-free soap dispensers, hands-free taps, all sorts of things that are coming on stream for the time when students would traditionally be coming back inside this building. Now, we just don't exactly know when that will be, whether there'll be a second wave, whatever will be. But whatever happens, September, semester 1 will be taught online, but this building will be open for students to use safely, when safe, when possible. If there's another lockdown, then obviously that won't be the case. So let me give you an example. If you are starting a degree with us this September, your learning will be online. Okay, now at the moment, the online learning that we're doing is absolutely great. And I think we can probably demonstrate some of that learning to you all individually if that's what you want to see, some examples of that and some of the feedback. But the buildings will be open, and the buildings will be open because the studios will be open. So it'll be a hybrid response where for those who want to stay outside of their own homes, etc., they can learn online and come in here whenever they want. So your presence inside the building won't be mandatory for your degree. So we're just talking a couple of months, and then from that couple of months onwards, we think we're going to be in a much different zone in the September 2021. So for everybody who wants to come in and use the studios will be here. They'll be available for booking. They'll be available for bringing people in with safe measures, whatever the distancing measures are at those times, etc., etc. So it'll be this highly creative environment where students can mix, students can come into the building, students can experience, but what they won't be able to experience is what puts them at risk, which is essentially large groups of people in face-to-face situations. That might change, but it's sensible, I believe, to start now and lay out our course. And our course is that hybrid of full creativity for those who want it. For those who don't want to come in, that's fine. It's not going to impact your degree, but excellent online education for all. This next several weeks, we've got all of our tutors coming in here, creating loads of brand new content, loads of new stuff, and we're finding really, really exciting creative ways in which we can deliver education, one-to-one tutorials, and so on and so forth. So I'm sure there's more questions, perhaps, that will come later, but I'll leave that one there. But it is a big one. Let me see if there's one more that I can think of. How did you find studying your course? Personally, very good, if that was directed at me. Like most people, I tend to learn whilst working on a project, but the advantage of the equipment and the knowledge that I was given by people who knew absolutely tons of stuff, more than I even know now, 2 years down the line, is you can't get that from books and YouTube. Books, YouTube, etc. tutorials are absolutely brilliant, and they can aid you and still aid me in learning. But the experience I had here, the people who I met, all sorts of bits and pieces, it was absolutely brilliant. Any other questions? Yep.
Does the electronic music production course give you the necessary skills to become a mastering engineer?
A mastering engineer on electronic music? No, I'd say not. I'd say if mastering, I mean, I've only just begun to start to consider mastering now in my own stuff, and this is like 2-3 years later on down the line. If I would have done a different course to electronic music, I would have studied a very different path and would have now been able to master mastering, if that makes sense. Will you ever, you'll just keep mastering. However, that said, once you are inside this building studying electronic music, there is no reason why when you're studying electronic music you don't hook up with people on other courses, make friends with people on other courses who will be learning mastering. Mastering itself is an art, and just like mixing, just like writing, to write, to mix, and to master are obviously three separate components. I'd say the writing and the mixing for me might go at the same time, but the mastering is very, very different. And so I'd consider that kind of no. I'd consider that a main no, really, in terms of mastering. But there is the possibility. You can learn whatever you want, basically. Once you start a course here, you can go everywhere. Yes, yeah. Music, but are we talking degree, or did you say the 6 month? Well, if it's a degree, then actually, yes, you will be able to, you will go down into that route of being able to master. Absolutely. Sorry, I wasn't sure if we were referring to the shorter course or the degree. The degree course absolutely will be part and parcel on a degree course as it would be anything else. It is an important aspect of music. So, yes, sorry, if it's degree, yes, it is. If it's the short course, like a 6 month course or something, then no, you would need to do a different course than that. The new course has been written with with lots and lots of changes. The big main focus for us was the emphasis on the live aspect. The live aspect needed to be a larger split than what the studio time was. So the majority of your time will be split on live and in the studio and in the venue and everything that provides you with. The exact split. The split by modules or the split as a percentage, I can give that to you. I think, was it Jacob who asked that question possibly? But if it is, I'll have a look through the notes and I'll email whoever it was what that is. So if it's an exact split that you're after, either by percentage or by modules, then we will email that to you, somebody in admissions. If it's a simple answer, that you require, i.e. is it more live than it is inside the studio, then that's a very straightforward and simple yes, there is more of an emphasis on live on this new course.
If you were interested in switching from music production to electronic music production, how would you go about doing this?
That depends, I suppose, what year you're in. If you transfer from a course to another course, then essentially we kind of APL over. So you can't go from one course onto another course without meeting criteria which will essentially not sync you. So if you study a first year of electronic music and you want to then join the second year of music production, then we will look to see whether or not the work that you've done and the modules that you've done, etc., in your year one will be sufficient to get you over to year two. The same applies in reverse from music production to music to electronic music. The same applies in any course. So if you've done music business, for instance, for 1 year and you want to then suddenly decide to do music production for year two, then obviously we would have to look to see what you're bringing in terms of music production knowledge and skills to year two, because if you've only been studying music production and not been studying any music, then obviously you're going to find life hard at the beginning of year two for music production. So yeah.
Roughly how many students do we get
in any year? We tend to sort of add it up globally over the numbers over 3 years and all courses. Each course will have a different number of students on it. So electronic music might have what we call 2 cohorts. So our class sizes, we tend to have around 20. They can go higher, but we don't want them to go higher. Once they go above that threshold, then we create a cohort B. So essentially there'll be cohort B. So there could be 2 cohorts for electronic music in year one. So that would give you anywhere between 40 to 45 students. Then if you do the same over music production and the same over other courses, some courses have less than others. So we're running, around about 300 students over the whole of the the whole of the degrees. But that number fluctuates. What will be one number one year might not be the same number another. But on average, we work to those numbers. And so what's important is class sizes, I think, and we all believe. And not only that is the reason why we don't want. We're a very big building, 4 floors, live venue, several recording studios, edit suites, radio station, DJ booths, all sorts of stuff. If we had too many people in them, then it would diminish the amount of time that you're inside the studio. So it's not so much how many people that we've got over the years, but it's what we've got on each individual courses and stuff. So hopefully that kind of answers.
Is there more than one campus, or are we in one building?
No, we are in one building. So we're in one building, which is, for those who know the Apollo Theatre, or rather the O2, as it is now, and for those who know the Manchester Piccadilly Railway Station, we are kind of in the middle between two, but much closer to Piccadilly Railway Station. I walk with a stride, and it gets me here in about 3 minutes. So we're very, very close. So it's just this one campus. Everything that we do takes place inside this building. So all studios are inside this building, everything. Obviously, we go outside of the building sometimes. We go outside for whether it's field trips or whatever it is, we go out. But yeah, it all takes place inside here. Our degrees are validated by UCLan. UCLan are in Preston. A great university, got a great partnership with them, very, very strong, a very, very good degree. And very highly respected, and they have facilities which students can benefit from. Not all of them. So yes, it's all here, but in a way you could consider Preston to be kind of has some advantages of some items that you can use.
Can you talk a bit about the application process and qualification for foreign students?
Okay, so foreign students, that depends where you're from. If you're from within the EU, then essentially you can apply through the same way that you can if you're a UK-based citizen. If you are from outside of the EU and you are an international student and you are from, North America, for instance, or somewhere like that, then for a degree, we can't take you, because to take you, we'd require a license, which would be a Tier 4 license. If they were short courses, you can apply to us anywhere to do a short course from anywhere, but you would need to apply for a visa in your own residential country. So we've had students here from literally all around the world. We've had some brilliant students through these doors over the years. I've been here for 5 years, and I've seen some absolutely tremendous ones who we've taught, and they've gone back, whether that's Brazil, India, Malta. The list is it's endless, and so it is possible to do that. With degrees, and back to the EU, obviously there is this other situation which is continuing, which is the whole concept of Brexit. That obviously also brings problems. But for all those in the EU who do want to apply to do a degree, you can still apply to do a degree in the UK with us from the EU. Outside of the EU, you've got countries like Estonia and Lithuania and places like that. You can also apply, and that's not considered to be a Tier 4 license. Again, whoever's answered that question, if you want to email at the end, then we can be in touch with you, and we can give you more advice per geography, where you are, which country you're in, etc.
Harvey wants to know, did we rename a course, and is there a major difference between the new live course and the old studio?
Yes, that's exactly what happened. So we've got 2 new courses, and one new course is an entirely brand new course, which is the entrepreneurial course, which is absolutely fantastic. It's a course which is highly unique, and it looks at ourselves as being producers in a future which where we're possibly working alone more. So we're more entrepreneurial. We don't have, for instance, maybe a desk at home, but we do have a Mac computer, whatever, DAW, so on and so forth, MIDI controller, all of the things that are within our grasp that we can write music and we can monetize, whether that's through scoring, film, television, games, whether that's been an individual producer for themselves, or whether that's for voiceovers, all sorts of bits and pieces. The course you're referring to, the other course, was Studio and Live, and it kind of bounces to the original question which I answered in terms of what was the split. And yes, the split on the other course was a less live split. There was more emphasis on the studio side. So what we've done is essentially we completely overhauled it, we completely rewrote it, to put the emphasis on live as opposed to studio. There are lots and lots of other changes. Again, I can't sort of go through all of them in absolute detail. I will point them out, though. I mean, if you go onto our website, obviously within the courses page, you'll see all of the bits and pieces which give you year 1, year 2 and year 3. What I can do is I can send you the historic differences if you like, so what the old modules were compared to what the new modules were. If you've already applied for Studio and Live, for instance, and you are going to be going on to this course, then essentially what you've done is you've now you've essentially been very fortunate that you've now just found yourself on what was already an excellent course, but on now, which is a much stronger course.
Would the music production course be a better fit for someone who wants to branch out their skills and opportunities? This is coming from someone who only makes electronic dance music.
Yes. Okay, I'll try and remember. So the question was, if I was studying electronic music, if I've got skills in electronic music, will studying music production give me more future-based skills and opportunities? Okay, yes, it would. It would, really, because music production opens up lots of avenues. I could sit here for ages and talk about electronic music, of what I really like, which is the idea of the electronic music which records instruments, which actually samples your own instruments, which records, instead of using a plug-in for a violin, get your own violin. Obviously, don't get your own violin for you to play, but find somebody to play it. The same would be for cellists or any orchestral instrumentation, or even guitars, or whatever it is. So the advantages to be able to learn how to record all of those individual parts are obviously very, very clear. This was quite normal years ago, in electronic music, to use things like tape machines, to use lots more samples, to create lots more sound using hammers, strings, etc., etc. So it's kind of going back to what that early day was. So yeah, there's much more of an advantage. The other advantage is also that music production will teach you how to, I don't know if it sounds really kind of silly, but it will teach you how to sort of build and put together. So how do I get a band in? How do I arrange for a sort of, an ensemble to arrive on time, well rehearsed, with all of the items that they need, all of these bits and pieces? So how do I manage that as a producer? Not as a producer from a sort of writing and making my own music, but as a producer in terms of actually getting people here on time, getting them doing a professional job, me doing a professional job in terms of recording them, and so on and so forth. So yeah, the advantages, if you're already au fait and strong in electronic music, to then go and study music production, I believe personally would be a very good move.
Harvey asked the question before about the course getting renamed. He's now asked, what has the course renamed to? Is audio engineering and music production the course that involves the live sound?
Correct. Yeah. So Harvey, that's right. So that the new course title has gone from Studio and Live now to the audio production audio production engineering and music production course. Yeah.
Do any first-year studios have analog processing gear to use, example compressors and chorus, or is it just for third year?
Yeah. How much do you want? Loads. Absolutely great question. And sorry, that's a bit of a flippant answer, but no, it's because we've got so much. There is so much. Incidentally, I'm just going to say one thing as well. Lewis and Al, that you've both seen, they're not tutors, and I think it's quite important to sort of point that out. When I said at the very start, when I gave my opening talk, I'd mentioned that most staff here create, produce, engineer, etc., and they do. Not all, but a lot do. And they're two of them, and they're actually studio assistants, and they work really, really hard in making things happen inside the studios and also showing students how things happen inside the studios. They're very hands-on, very full support, and as you've seen, really knowledgeable and really, really passionate about their stuff. So yes, all of that stuff is all available, and staff come with it as well. So they will teach you how to use all of these pieces if and when you want it. But from the very get-go, it's available to you. We have to do certain things. There's signal path tests, studio inductions, all of the safety stuff that you would need before you could come into a studio. Many of you may even have studio experience. You could well have. And so it would be an easy transition for you. But yes, there is absolutely lots. Every single studio has items in the entry-level studios. Sorry, I'm not repeating the questions, am I?
Can I apply for September 2021 now?
Can I apply for September 2020-21 now?
September 2021 now.
Oh, 2021. So if you want to apply for 2021, so you begin in September 2021, applications for that aren't open yet. Applications for that are open if you go through UCAS, and we'd urge obviously all applications to go through UCAS. They won't be available and open until clearing, kind of extra and clearing sort of goes through that period. The best thing to do is keep an eye out on UCAS itself. If you go and find our course, so if you find the course that you're interested in, look for what the course code is, find that course on UCAS. And for anybody who can't find it, you'll find, typing in the course details will come up. We'll obviously be in there underneath UCLAN who validate our degrees. And UCAS will guide you through that date as to when you can apply. Sorry, I thought you meant apply for this year. For those who wanted to apply for this September, yes, applications are still open.
Do you have to have any prior qualifications to apply for a course here?
Do you have to have any prior qualifications to apply for a course here? By and large, yes. But not always. So you don't necessarily need the qualifications in music, but if you're of a certain age and you've gone through the process of finishing your A-levels, etc., when you apply to us, a certain level of UCAS points are needed for each course. Each course on our website will provide you details of what points per course are needed. However, some students are mature students, and mature students will be those who are aged above your early 20s. And then the answer is no, you don't. But what will always happen in all cases is that an interview process will happen. Primarily, we need to know that you can pass a degree. We will not take any student who we think will nosedive on a degree. It would be completely and totally wrong. So an interview process is robust. So we'll look at everything. We'll look at all applications, not only on qualifications, but we look at personal statements. We look at what you've done. We look at what you're doing. You're free to send us music. There's all sorts of bits and pieces that go around it. So yeah, informally, yes, absolutely, you do need qualifications. You don't need them previously in music production, but you don't always need qualifications for certain circumstances. I know that might sound a bit woolly, but they're kind of all individual cases. But what will always happen is that all people who choose a degree and who start with us with a degree will be a solid applicant capable of passing a high degree.
Can you just confirm, because a few people have asked, so the first semester is going to be online with access to studios available as well?
Yes. So access to studios. Let me talk a little bit more about that.
Can you just read them?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Right. So, okay. The question is So I've been asked to make clear that September 2020 onwards, the teaching will be online only, but all studios will be made available for all students. Okay, so that's the question. And the answer to that is yes. So what will happen is inside this building now, we've got screens, we've got gels every, on several on each floor, inside offices. As I say, taps have all been changed. We all need to comply. We all need to do our bit. And we, as a business, we definitely do. And as individuals, we absolutely have to do. So we've just conducted a risk assessment. The situation is constantly changing. The government will be making changes all of the time. Public Health England will be making changes all of the time. And we will look at those changes, and we will consider those changes, and we will react to those changes. At the same time, we also can't wait for those changes, and we have to assume what life is going to be like, or potentially is going to be like. My own personal instinct could be everything's back to normal in September, but it might not be. So the safest ways to do this hybrid is that the building is safe, the access is here, not that much will change. There'll be some restrictions. So if you were to bring a 14-piece band into the studios to try and record it, it would be impossible to be able to do that if social distance measures were still in place. However, you're a student, you can come in here in these studios and use them, but you do not have to. You don't have to. So some students might want to, some students might not want to. In addition to that, we'll also be looking to provide all sorts of bits and pieces. Last year, and something that I hadn't mentioned earlier, is the student experience. So we have masterclasses, talks, we do things, we host Ableton meetups, we will do things like modular synthesis classes, we've got the radio station, there's all sorts of opportunities and all sorts of bits and pieces that we will be able to provide to students inside this building safely, provided that we all do it safely. And we will do. We're doing our bit, and so it will happen, unless the government tell us otherwise and there'll be a lockdown. But what it does mean is that for those students who still don't feel they want to do that, then you can still work online on your degree. Working online on your degree for September and onwards and into January to the end of the first semester, in my opinion, is actually a good thing. It's a good thing not only because there's the experience of online actually proving to be quite beneficial for a lot of people. It gives you a different sort of method of learning when combined with use in the studio. But for those who don't want to come in the studio because they can't for one reason or another, then you're still going to get that aspect of learning. And then once the semester one is over, then we envisaged it will be back to some kind of normalcy.
Can you just give out the Manchester email then for people who have any more questions? At Spirit Studio.
Yeah, the email address I've been asked for is for all enquiries. So anybody with any questions after this, email us please. Put your name on it, which it probably will if it's come from an email, and your question, and we will answer it. We'll either answer it ourselves, i.e. me, or it could go to admissions, or it could go to Lewis or to Al or to anybody at all. So let's see what that question is, and we'll get it answered by the right people. The email address is manchester@spiritstudios.ac.uk. Okay. Yeah, I apologise as well. I think there's a few questions that I've not been able to answer, or I've not been able to answer specifically enough. So again, sorry for all those that I haven't. If you email us that question that you have that wasn't answered today, or any of the questions that I have answered but you still don't think it was clear enough or specific enough or detailed enough for you, then please also email that question. We are living in really, really, really complex times, and we're doing a lot. We're working so hard in here, well ahead of the curve, to sort of do what we can do, and any information that we can provide to you will be best. So I think that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the time with Lewis and Al. I hope you've enjoyed the questions as well. Thank you for everyone who's coming. Thank you to every member of staff who's made this possible. And finally, I hope you're all well, and I want to wish you all and your family and everybody a continued safe time, and hopefully a change now in circumstances is coming where we can all start to integrate more as people, and so on and so forth. So get in touch. Anybody that wants to come into the building at some point, obviously we can't wait to see you, but I think that's it. Okay, thank you.